Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. Today we're diving into a very fun and cozy reading day, things to do with reading, but also you would have just seen this fun little daily notepad planner. I've been wanting to design stationery for a long time and actually started drafting up this idea this summer, and then things got really busy and I didn't have time to work on it, and I finally made a design that I wanted to get printed. And so I just got a little sample printed for myself just to see what it would look like on paper and how it would function in my day-to-day. So I want to test it for a little while, see if I need to make any changes, because I just kind of came up with the items that I like to have written out every day. I'm looking at it and there are a few things that maybe I want to change on it, but overall I'm loving it. It's not based off of any specific book or anything like that, but just kind of the fantasy vibes. Anyways, I used it for the first time today and wrote out our plan for the day. So let's walk through it. Breakfast happened. Reading sprint at 8 o'clock. I did that. That was with Faith's Reading Things on Instagram and YouTube. Planning, that's what I just did, writing all this out and planning for what we're gonna do the rest of the day. I'm actually going to work on my reading journal and update some spreads in here. I have a post that I have an idea for that I want to do with the reading journal, just to like do a little flip through. I want to sew a book sleeve. Just, I think one of the ones that ties, has little bow strings to tie. And we'll discuss how I'm going to do that later, because I'm not going to be using a pattern. I'm going to be self-drafting. So I'll show you how you can do that. I've done this one other time and it worked great. So we're going to try again. And then we're going to a friend's for dinner tonight. So that's kind of my plan. I wrote out my little task list. I wrote out the menu. I'm just a very planny person, so I like to have everything written out. But I also have this little gratitude section because I think that's good just to be aware of throughout the day. It can be really easy to let the day get away from you and look back and be like, wow, I did nothing productive. I doom scrolled all day. Whatever, today was terrible, instead of actually looking at things that we're grateful for. So I'm excited to have that be a part of this. I am trying to decide if I like it the full page size. So this is like a full letter size of 8.5 by 11. And other ones that I've got in the past are maybe like maybe 6 by 9 size. So I might get another sample of 6 by 9 and see which one I like better. But I would love to create some other products to go along with this in a little like fantasy collection, but I need to brainstorm that. So that will be a whole nother video, not today. Today we're focusing on reading. So what I read this morning was Bryce Singer, which is the third book in the Aragon series. And I also am reading A Fellowship of Bakers and Magic. I haven't read this yet today, but I'm doing a buddy read with my sister-in-law on Fable. So I need to update some comments on there, but I do want to get started on my reading journal. So maybe I'll update my comments for A Fellowship of Bakers and Magic, and then we can talk about my plot for some reading journal pages. I just showed you all of my supplies that I have for this. So I printed out all the books that I'm going to be needing to put in the journal, and then I've got colored pencils, some fun little scissors. This book is a little woodland themed scrapbooking book. So it's got stickers and scrapbooking pages just to go with whatever you want. So this is just kind of the vibe that I like. I mean, you know, we just talked about how much I love fantasy, so that's the one I got. They have a ton of different ones. I got that one at Michael's, but we're gonna go ahead and get into it. I'm gonna watch Harry Potter. So let's dive right into getting a little creative in our book.
We are in trouble. You were seen.
Yet, but they could knock you out for several hours, which is why I've given you that.
Hello everybody. It's been a while, actually, of the afternoon. This project has taken longer than I initially planned on my little planner, which is usually how things go. But I just want to show you where we're at with my reading journal. I added 4 pages to my reading journal, starting with this page. I wanted to do this September calendar spread. I'd seen some similar things on Pinterest and just wanted to put all the little books where I finished them, like on the dates. So they're a little bit bigger than the squares that I wrote out. I probably next time should measure out a little bit better, but I like the overlapping look a little bit. Okay, this spread is my favorite thing probably I've done in my reading journal so far. So this is my October spread. I have my October title page over here, which I just did a little like letter envelope opening digital collage on my Instagram and was kind of inspired by that to do a little like fall themed one for the October title page. And then I did my October TBR, did a little bit of a medieval text font here. In Canva, I just put the books that I wanted to be on the TBR in frames. I love this spread. Oh, it's so cute. Wow, it's so fall-y and fun. And then my last page is my Kindle Unlimited TBR. But I just went through the other day and wanted to write out all the books that I want to read that are on there just so that I can have an easy reference for that. Anyways, now that I've finally finished that, I'm going to do my book sleeve, which I don't actually think will take very long, and I'll kind of show you how I self-draft this. And that'll be the last project for this fun book vlog. So I've already gotten my materials out, but essentially you're going to need an inside fabric pattern and an outside fabric pattern. I'm doing like a ribbon type thing so that I can tie a bow to close the book sleeve. So that's what these are for. I just grabbed one of the bigger books that I have to use as my reference for just how big everything needs to be. So this is what will be on the outside of my book sleeve. And then this is the pattern I chose to be on the inside of my book sleeve. And I'm using a cutting mat and this rotary cutter just because it's a little bit easier, but you don't have to use that. You can use normal scissors too, that's fine. And normally you should iron these, but I don't have an ironing board, so I'm not gonna be ironing mine. But I will put my book down here. We'll fold this over so you won't have to sew anything on the bottom. But we'll sew both of the sides together and we'll leave the top part open because that's where the book will go in and we'll tie. So you're going to cut a rectangle of fabric based on the size of your book. And when you're testing it with the book inside, you need to make sure that you leave enough of a seam allowance for sewing all the edges together. So I'm probably leaving 2 inches on either side of the book, and then on the top there's maybe 1.5 inches or 2 inches. Better to err on the side of extra fabric than less because you can always come back and cut it off. I'm just triple checking that I left enough space on the ends for this to fit my book, so if you want to check even more precisely, you can pin along the sides where you're going to end up sewing. Next, you're going to want to measure how wide you want your ties to be, so I'm folding this fabric in half like we're doing with the book sleeve so that I only have to sew one side of it. I'm making these extra long right now because I will show you a hack that I have to figure out the correct length later. You can also use the lining piece that you already cut as a template to cut out the outside fabric for the sleeve in the same shape and the same size. You want to make sure your fabric is folded in half and that the 2 folded edges are lined up. So I just made my first, whatever this is called, ribbon for tying. And I just want to tell you what I was doing. So I just fold these in half, and I really just eyeballed how thick I think I want them to be and cut that. And I made them a little longer than I probably need them just so I can trim that once I can actually do a test tie and just see how it is. So I personally wanted a little curved edge on my ribbons, so that's what I'm sewing into them, but you don't have to do that. It can be straight across, it could be like a straight diagonal. I did mine curved. And we're going to turn these inside out once we sew them. So I start in the corner right here. So I have mine off to a little bit of an angle. And as it goes, I'm going to let it curve around. And then I'll just sew straight down. And I'm just doing a straight stitch right now. And I always do a little forward and backward stitches at the beginning and the end. Now I do think this one might be a little bit skinnier than this one. So, I mean, it's definitely going to be skinnier. But I personally don't care that much. It'll be close enough for my liking. But if you want things to be more precise, just measure out and pin. And then I'm just trimming off the excess around the edge because when we turn it inside out, if all that's in there, it's going to be really bulky. You can always iron these after you sew as well, just to get a little extra press in there.
Come on.
Now that I've got those done, I tied them in a little bit of a bow because that's what I want to be able to do at the end, but this is just going to help me mark off where I want to attach them to the actual book sleeve. So the next thing I'm going to do is just sew up both of the sides of these separately. So I'll put the right sides together. I'm going to sew both of their edges together, except on the lining one, I'm going to leave a little bit of a gap because we're going to need to flip it inside out eventually for a more complicated part later. But just mark like 3 to 4 inches where you're not going to sew together and leave that part unattached. I'll explain more later. So starting with the outside fabric, because that's the simplest, we're just going to sew a straight stitch fully up both sides of that with a 1/4 inch seam allowance on either side. I'm just double checking my seams here, so I'm flipping it right side out just to make sure everything's looking good, which it is. Now for the lining fabric, you're only going to sew a straight stitch up one side of that, and then we're going to do something different on the other side. So before you start sewing, I mentioned this before, but you're going to want to make sure you mark a 3 to 4 inch gap in the center of that side that you're not going to sew, so that you have space to pull all of your stuff out when we need to flip it inside out. So I drew you a little diagram here, but you need to sew on either side of where that gap is, and make sure you forward and backward stitch a little bit just to make sure that each of your seams are secure. Okay, now that we have our two fabrics sewn together, again, make sure this one has a gap. The lining fabric has a gap. And this is going to stay with the bad side out, if that makes sense, the wrong side out. So this is what it's going to look like once we actually open our book sleeve. So this is going to stay the normal way, and the outside piece is actually going to go inside of that for now so that we can make clean edges when we attach them. This will all make sense once we flip it inside out. I know it does not make sense right now, but that's why we left that little gap. Because once we sew this together, we're going to need somewhere to turn this right side out again. So put that in there. I also just test if my book is still fitting with my seam allowances and all that stuff. So this is going to end up being a perfect size, actually, I think. So just keep that in mind. I would keep testing this as you get ready to cut pieces off just to make sure that it still fits. I said this already, but we'll just show you again close up. So make sure the wrong side of your lining fabric is out. So you should have your right sides together for this. Here's our little gap where we can turn it inside out. And here is our ribbons. And so these are actually going to go inside. It's going to look backwards. So I'm just going to mark them with pins so I know where they can be attached. I'm going to untie this. This whole thing is actually going to go inside of here up to where you wanted it to be attached. I'm going to attach that right there so it doesn't move. So basically when we sew around this edge, it's also going to sew in our ribbon so that all the lines are clean. Again, we'll see better once we flip it inside out. So I'm going to do the same thing with my other little ribbon. The right side, so the part that you want to keep, needs to go inside, in between your two layers. Make sure you're lined up with the other ribbon so that they will tie together. And then I'm going to pin all 3 of those layers together. Like that. But I want to make sure I line up the corners where my two seams are. And then I'll do the same for the other seams just to make sure those are lined up. So you just want to make sure your edges are lined up all the way around. I'm going to remove this so that I have space to kind of go around, but make sure you don't sew the whole thing together like that. Make sure you get the gap. So I'm going to put that underneath there. I'm going to start in on a seam because like we're going to have to front and back stitch again. So I just try to line those up so it looks cleaner. So I'm going to sew all around this and then we'll turn it inside out.
They've met before.
Okay, now's the moment of truth where we see if I was wrong or if I was right. So we're gonna pull everything through this little gap we left right there to turn it right side out. Oh, it's gonna be so cute. Oh yes, I think we did it right. So it should look like this because when you push this part down inside there, that should be your lining. Yeah, anyways, but don't do that yet. We just need to close up this gap that we left. And if you want to get more precise and poke out the corners with something like a chopstick or a loop turner or whatever you can, this would be the time to do that because you won't be able to once we sew it up. So what we're going to do is kind of fold those edges in. They'll kind of go in naturally with how your other seam was. But we're just going to sew a straight stitch right there on that open part. And it's a lining, so you're not really going to see it. So it doesn't really matter. That's how we close that up. I'm also sewing as close to the edge as possible because I want it to be as hidden as possible. See, you can barely even tell that's there. Okay, we're gonna put it right side, inside, lining side, in. Oh yeah. It's so cute. Okay, so this is what it should look like. You should have your two little ribbons, your outside fabric, and then when you open it, you have your lining pattern. Oh, it's so cute. Okay, let me make sure my book still fits. Oh, it's perfect. It's perfect. Oh, I'm so happy. I've been meaning to make myself one of these pretty much since I made it for that one friend at Christmas time. Are you kidding me? That's actually the cutest thing ever. So you can do this very quickly, very quickly. I would highly recommend. And you can iron this once you finish it if you want. I'm not going to. I'm just going to leave my book in here. Come back for this later. I have to run, but I will see you guys in my next video. Thank you for coming along on the little book fun. I'm going to turn off my Harry Potter and we're going to a friend's house for dinner. So I will see you guys in my next video. Harrison, I finished my book thing. Come look at it. I sewed it. Is this off?
Where?
Right here.
Wow. Did you make it yourself?
I just sewed that.
Did you make it yourself?
Yeah, what do you mean?
Like, does the design it yourself?
Oh, no, yeah, I made it up.
Nice.
Well, I mean, I didn't make it up, like people make them, but I didn't follow a pattern. You like it? Isn't it cute?
It's fun.
It matches my sewing machine cover.
It does. You are so talented.
That's so nice.
Way to go.